everyone. Welcome to the Guthrie Public Schools Board of Education regular monthly meeting for Monday, November 13th, 2017. Can you roll call, please?
Salee. Pearson.
Present.
Pennington.
Here.
Davis. Watts.
Present.
Smedley.
Here.
Bennett Johnson.
Here.
Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would all please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Agenda item number 6, student recognition.
This time I'd like to ask Mr. Drake from our Ag Department to please come forward and make some introductions for us.
Thank you all very much, Board of Education, Dr. Simpson. We want to recognize a couple of our FFA members for outstanding fall that they've had. I'm going to invite Dr. Cochran and Garrett Weldon to come forward if you would, please. Just kind of give a little bit of background of why we're recognizing these two individuals. Dalton Cochran just recently attended National FFA Convention in Indianapolis, Indiana. This was the second year in a row he was qualified as a member of the National FFA Band, which is a very big honor. He is a third generation of his family to have this honor as far as working and doing the National FFA Band. So representing Guthrie and the state of Oklahoma very well, we're very proud to hang our hat on that recognition for him. For Garrett Weldon, you talk about kind of an opportunity not out of the ballpark. He had a Duroc Hall, Duroc Barrow that he exhibited this fall. Went to Oklahoma State Fair, was grand champion at the Oklahoma State Fair, took him on to Tulsa and was grand champion at the Tulsa State Fair.
Wow.
So probably I did some research and asking around, and to accomplish having grand champion at 2 state fairs in the same year is less than 7 people to ever accomplish that honor. So we're very proud of these individuals for representing not only Guthrie, but Guthrie Public Schools as well, and we wanted to recognize them as well. So. Back. Thank you all.
Great job and
you.
congratulations.
Very good job.
Agenda item number 7, presentation of Certified Support Employee of the Month.
Mr. Ogle?
This month, for the Support Employee of the Month, Ms. Reynolds, Ashley Reynolds is not able to be here, so Ms. Davidson's going to come up. But Gary, will you please come up? Gary Oliver was the Support Employee of the Month. Gary, let me tell you that you received a lot of different people that sent in nominations for you, and so very much appreciated. And I'm going to let Susan read. You will receive a $25 from the Lions Club for Sonic, and you're going to get your choice of one of these 2 envelopes from Integrity Heat and Air. They gave a $50 Missy's gift certificate or a $50 Walmart gift card. So
yeah.
I'll let you pick one of those. And I'll give
Gary, it is my pleasure on behalf of Ms. Reynolds and myself and several other people who recommended you to tell a little bit about why you were nominated for Employee of the Month. There's no way to adequately describe how invaluable Mr. Oliver is, not just to the ED classroom, but to guests and even to elementary students with special emotional and behavioral needs at other schools in the district. For example, just recently he was able to observe a young student at Central that was at risk of being moved to the ED room at Guess. He He made a few suggestions to help the student's teacher and principal to better support him, and so far those suggestions have succeeded in keeping that student at his school. Most days at Guest, Mr. Oliver stays pretty busy keeping the classroom running smoothly by handling all sorts of behavioral problems so that Ms. Reynolds can teach. He still finds time to help other Guest teachers and students. In some cases, they are our mainstream students, but in some cases, they aren't ours at all, and he's still there to help. He does everything from helping students with assignments to making sure they can take their medication on time and helping them de-escalate in a cool-down room as needed. Mr. Oliver also occasionally sits in for me at meetings to offer input and gather information on Ms. Reynolds' behalf if she has a conflict. He spent an hour and a half at a placement meeting at Central for her just last Thursday evening while she was at a previously arranged meeting for another student Guest. Despite dealing with stressful situations on a daily basis, he always remains calm, composed demeanor. And while his job must be very overwhelming, if he is overwhelming, the students and Ms. Reynolds are never able to tell. He is truly her right hand at work and the student's right hand at school, and she couldn't do her job as well without him. Congratulations.
Good.
Thank you.
And the Certified Employee of the Month presenting will be Mr. Chris LeGrand, and the Certified Employee of the Month was James Strayhorn.
All right. It's my privilege this evening to introduce the Certified Employee of the Month, and this is what I wrote about Mr. Strayhorn. Respectfully, I'd like to nominate James Strayhorn as October Certified Employee of the Month. While only in his second year of teaching, Mr. Strayhorn has far exceeded our expectations. He is committed to building quality relationships with his students, and this is quite apparent when visiting his classroom. Mr. Strayhorn differentiates his instruction to ensure each and every student in his math class understands the concepts. For example, students will not receive assignment B until assignment A has been mastered. As a result, students are continually being monitored and assessed for understanding. In addition, Coach Strayhorn has led a renaissance within the cross-country program. Under his tutelage, for the first time since 2007, both the girls and boys cross-country teams qualified for the state meet. Guthrie Cross Country is back on the map and will be a force with which to be reckoned in the coming years with so many young runners. Mr. Strayhorn is an asset to Guthrie Public Schools and is quite deserving of this esteemed distinction. I nominate him with utmost honor and admiration for what he is doing in the lives of our young people.
Very good.
Gary, can I have, after we get done, can I have a back up there and take a picture with all of them?
All right. This will be, that's good. That's here, yeah. It was excellent. Yeah, really. He's a collector. Why he came here, because he wanted to train under Clark. Great. Yeah.
Thank you all
Thank you.
very much.
Very good. Thank you.
Agenda item number 8, comments to the board by citizens registered to speak.
We have none.
Comments to the board by board members. Agenda item number 9, superintendent's report.
Got several items here. First of all, last Thursday, several administrators attended the annual Thanksgiving luncheon at Meridian Technology Center where many of our students were showing off their culinary skills, and I can verify that the food they had prepared was delicious. Saturday was Veterans Day, but our students each side have been participating in assemblies over the last week. I was fortunate enough to attend the high school assembly this morning. We certainly want to thank all veterans for their service to our country. I recently received a letter of thanks from the United Way of Logan County for the assistance of our FFA students provided at the kickoff campaign luncheon. It was a fun time, and I was personally honored to serve the meal alongside our students. We have selected our building teachers of the year, and they are from Cotterell, Desi Rice, a pre-K teacher, Kara Henson, a kindergarten teacher. At Central, Becca Creed, a media specialist. At Fogarty, Sandy Onley, a second grade teacher, and Joni Delaney, a third grade teacher. At Guess, Jackie Ross, teaching fourth grade, Emily Carpenter, an interventionist, and Audra Branson, teaching sixth grade. At the junior high, Terry Darcy, our tech ed teacher, and Brian Deering, a history teacher. And from the high school, Rob Blackburn, our high school band director, Jeff Jordan, an English teacher, Allison Lee Lucas, computer applications in German, and then Michelle Reedus, a science teacher. And we will have the district-wide announcement in February, and we always do that before the board meeting, and so we look forward to that and the continued competition. And finally, state legislature has been in special session since September 25th. Last Wednesday, a vote was held in the House of Representatives floor for some significant revenue-raising measures. The vote would have paved the way for a $3,000 raise for teachers and a $1,000 raise for state employees. It fell 6 votes short of the required 75% majority that our state requires to raise taxes. It now appears that we will have more budgetary Band-Aids and one-time revenue sources used to fund recurring expenses, as well as targeted cuts to state agencies. Initial reports, and this is today, initial reports indicate that common education may be spared, but career tech could receive some cuts. Normally, when career tech receives cuts, some of that is passed along to us in the form of program allocations. While this is not good fiscal policy, the hurdle of our state constitution provides to raise taxes, that our state constitution provides to raise taxes seems insurmountable at this time. Ultimately, this solution will create an even greater budgetary hole to fill for next year. And that is a statewide problem that we have yet to address. That's my report.
Yes, sir. Agenda item 10, presentation by principals Ms. Marcia Todd, Ms. Susan Davis, and Mr. Robbie Rainwater, Mr. Chris LeGrand, the final Oklahoma testing program results for Fogarty, Guess, Guthrie Junior High School, and Guthrie High School for 2016-27.
Okay.
Marcia, if you want to come on up. I'll just say a few words. We talked about last month about the state preparing for the scores to go down with comparing it to the NAEP. What we were looking at was where we were at compared to the state average. They did not release our peer state average that we usually give, and so we're just going to be able, the principals are going to talk about what they're doing in their building and the scores that were presented last month.
Okay, we're going to start with Fogarty Math. As you can see, the state average was 45% and Fogarty's was 30%, which was a 15-point range between Fogarty's and the state average. And last year in 2016, we were 52%, the state average was 67%, which remained at that 15-point range. One thing, whenever I started at Fogarty, I could kind of wrap my mind around the reading scores because I'd been in the classroom, but I could not, for the life of me, figure out why we were so low in math. So we immediately started working on that, and some of the things that we've done is we have aligned our standards and blueprints, and of course that's been a game changer from last year and this year and the previous year with PASS. So it's a constant rotation there. Hopefully we're stable now and know what we're teaching. But we have shared those down to kindergarten all the way up to third grade so that they are aware of what standards are the majority of that test. For example, number sense and operations is 46% and geometry measurements 28% of the test. So we want to make sure that our teachers are spending the majority of their time in the classroom really targeting those standards. And we also put out some examples of what those questions might look like from past release test items, so that, when I was in the first grade classroom, for example, I had no idea what I was just, oh, well, surely they can add and subtract. Well, let's look at what that question would really look like and the rigor of that question. And I was kind of blown away with that the first year that I really started researching it. So we've passed that information down to those lower grades so that they are aware. We have put manipulatives back in our kids' hands, and because they've got to have that number sense, and they're not going to get that on pencil paper. They've got to be able to manipulate that. And we've also focused heavily on our academic vocabulary, making sure that students not only see that word and know the definition, but they're required to provide examples and drawings of that definition, so that when they see that on a test, many times you'll think, oh, I know the kids know how to do that, but it's phrased in a way, or it uses a vocabulary term that they weren't familiar with. So we've really started targeting that. And we stepped up our team effort at Fogarty. We are working as a team, and my third grade teachers and second grade teachers now take this very personal. They not only meet with me once a month, but they started 2 years ago meeting on their own on a weekly basis for both English and math, and that's something that they took on, really looking at those standards in our curriculum and realizing that just teaching the curriculum isn't rigorous enough, and we're going to have to supplement. And they come to me and say, this is the supplementation that we need and we feel like will help get our kids there. So we're really trying to focus on that rigor and think outside the box with math. And of course, we're not quite there yet, but I think that by going down to K level, that over a 3 or 4 year process with everybody on the same boat and teaching that same rigor, that over time we will see that math score come up. With our English and language arts, I always hate the term teaching to the test, because we really try not to do that. But at the same time, if you're not aware of how a question is phrased and what that's going to look like, then you got to play the game at some point. So we've really started looking at summarization, for example, and realizing that they may not ask us to summarize an entire story. It might be just a little bitty paragraph of the story. So we're really looking at strategies, and we've passed that information down just like we did with our math blueprints. In 2016, we were 13 points below the state average. And in 2017, even with the adjustments that were made, we closed that gap with 10 points. So we were just 3 points short. We closed that by closing up 3 points there. And we're also having our second grade students start taking the math test instead of the MPG at the beginning of the year. And the difference between those is the map does not read anything to the student. So it's kind of a initial shock to them, because they're saying, where's my earphones and where's this? And we're like, you got this, and a little pep talk, but just in preparation for the rigor of what is required. So we're working on that. We're also, with RSA being a big factor, one thing that I'm very proud of is that in 2016 we managed to keep 81% of our students passing the RSA portion and meeting the RSA requirements for the test, and the state average was 88%. Which was a 7-point difference. And then even with the change in standards and rigor this year, we still maintain 75% of our students passing the RSA requirements on the test, and the state average was 80%, so we closed that gap with our students a little bit. We're focusing on, again, the main portions with the reading and writing process and vocabulary, and really using some cross-curriculum, using more nonfiction with our science and social studies to bring in and help kind of prepare our students a little bit more for the rigor and the rigorous comprehension part. So any questions for me?
Thank you.
I feel like I could stand up here and repeat everything that Marcia said, because, we talk about having our teachers work together, and I think as principals, we do the same thing. So we share a lot of our ideas and we build off. And so I'm just going to start with, I'll get this going. What did I just do? There it is. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. We don't have these things yet. If we look at our grades, one thing that our teachers are used to that the younger grades aren't is we've always had something to compare to. Because even with third grade test scores, they still had those third grade test scores to look at. And so they feel like they're like losing their minds because they don't have that, because we can't compare to the year before. Because as Joey Hoffmeister said, this is a reset year. The test looks nothing like it did the year before, so they aren't able to look at that growth factor that they want to. But we have looked at our difference in the state average. And the students that took the fourth grade math, they were at 15 points below the state average when they came to them, and they did close that gap. Even though the rigor was harder, we still closed that gap. And in fourth grade math, they were 5 points still below the state average. Our fourth grade reading was above the state average, so we were very pleased with that. It's just 2 points, but it's still 2 points above that state average, so we're really pleased with that in the fourth grade ELA. Fifth grade math was above the state average by 1 point. Again, it usually stays. It's usually a little bit higher above the state average, but we're still above that state average, so we're pleased with this. Our fifth grade ELA is our weakest and our score that is the farthest away from the state average. The year before this, the writing test didn't count, so I had to go back to 2015's scores. And again, I'm just looking at the difference in the state average. That year, if you put together the ELA and the writing, we were at about 15 points below the state average. In this, the ELA and the writing are together in one test, so we're only getting one score. So even though we had that big discrepancy, I still feel like it's not where we want to be, but I don't feel like we lost ground considering. And that's the first year the writing was in with the ELA, and they had no idea what to expect. So hopefully with now knowing what they're going to be ahead of them, they'll see that. Our science, the year before we were right even with the state average, so we did lose a little ground. So those are new standards and new curriculum, and so we've looked at that, looked at our standards, and they're really focusing on the specific standards as they're broken down in the state test. Our sixth grade math was only 4 points below the state average. We've gained some. I think the year before they were 8 points, so we're closing that gap again between where we are and the state average. And our sixth grade ELA was 1 point, and they were 3 points below the year before. And again, we can't compare the growth, but I still feel like as long as we're closing that gap on where we are and where the state average is, especially with the rigor, we're moving ahead. A couple of things that we're doing at GUESS is in the past we've done interim assessments, which look a lot like the state test in that it tests everything. But the teachers we talked about and being able to break it down into specific standard, that way we can immediately address those students who don't understand it. So we've gone into more of about every 2 to 3 week assessments based on the standards we're teaching right now, so we can hit those interventions a little bit quicker and have better turnaround with that. As far as we are doing some more online programs that are helping us in their free time to Study Island, PTO has purchased that, and we're doing some of those online programs that have tracking as well and rewriting those standards tests. And again, a lot like Marcia said, our teachers are just working better together, not harder, but smarter in sharing of ideas, looking at it. We also looked at the blueprints, and each year the teachers sit down and fill out their pacing guide based on the school calendar. They take out homecoming, they take out Christmas breaks. And then they take out the first week of school, and then we look at 2 weeks before testing. And then we look at that blueprint, and if a standard is 28% of the blueprint, then we make sure we have at least 28% of our teaching days are spent on that standard. Now, if it happened to be a standard we did really well on, maybe we don't spend that much time. We take a few of those days and add it back to a standard where we were weaker. So that's kind of how we manage our time and make sure we don't get to April and it's testing and I still have 2 more subjects to teach. We don't worry about the textbook. We're looking at the standard, not the textbook. Okay? Any questions?
Susan, I'm looking at this from the 3rd grade to the 6th grade with the exception of the ELA in the 5th grade. It looks like kids are, I know at the 3rd grade level, that's when it really starts hitting them with the testing. It looks like they're getting a confidence level by the time they're getting to the 6th grade. Do you think that's that they're, you know, I can see how the 3rd grade, that's got to be so strenuous on the kids. Yeah, scary.
Also is now online, and the first time we went online, we were afraid, because we were afraid that we were going to lose it. It actually showed improvements because they were more engaged in the assessment than paper pencil, where they're like, put the pencil down and look around the room. They stayed focused on that computer screen. So I think even though we thought that would hit us and be hard because the kids weren't used to it, it really was an advantage going online with testing. And I think it's 2 years, and so 5th grade will go online. I think it's in 2 years. Now, whether or not that happens, but that's what is projected.
So they feel more comfortable with computers.
I do see the confidence level in the testing.
One of the things, when I initially looked at these scores, that I drew a conclusion of very quickly, I think I shared this with the curriculum committee. We know what our students come to school with and some of the challenges. And if you look at the body of work of this, I think that we are closing the gap as they go through our system. And I think that is a tribute to the buy-in that we've had, and it hasn't always been smooth, but the buy-in that we've had as we've implemented the data-driven instruction that we have utilized over the last 5 years or so. And the buy-in of the things that we gleaned from the University of Virginia that we're still doing. And I think as we close that gap, I think we have to accept the fact that at the younger grades, we're probably going to have a struggle, but as they go through our system, we're narrowing that gap toward the state average. And I think that's just a tribute to the staff from top to bottom.
I do too. I want to reiterate that too, because Carmen sent us the figures from the last year and this, and I know when this first started several years back, when we first started working on all these numbers, everybody was frustrated. We were, and I know all of you all were, but I can see now that you all feel more confident because you see it too. You see the difference and you understand, and we see it, and I just say kudos to all of you because it shows, and we're very proud of you all. I mean, well, I speak for myself, but I think we all agree that we can see you're doing, and it makes us feel good. But like Janae said, you can see it coming, and it's great to see. It really is.
One other thing that I'm hoping will make a difference this year, and it'll take getting next year's scores, is that the support we're getting from the DA on the attendance. I've had several meetings on my 5, and knowing that meeting's coming with the others, it's getting that improvement. And as teachers have said so many times, I can't teach them when they're not here, but yet I'm responsible for their test scores. So I'm glad that we're finally getting that support that's necessary. I know that's because Dr. Simpson had to pull teeth on the
Just reached out to her, and she was
so
eager
she was
to help.
willing, but I know that was you know, you guys have discussed that beforehand, and so I'm excited to see the difference that'll make too in our schools.
And you're building confidence, you know, all of you building confidence in the children, the students, and it shows. And that's what it's all about, because it shows as they go older, and, you know, they'll be ready for college and ready to move on. So thank you.
Okay, for the junior high, when these scores first came out, probably where I've grown the most as a administrators limiting the amount of knee-jerk reactions I have to things I see, and I started using my school leadership team as a buffer a little bit. And when I first saw these scores, I started writing things down and all my thoughts on paper, and I put together this PowerPoint. And the first thing I did is I sent it out to my school leadership team and some teachers to say, okay, tell me what I can say and what I can't. And so this is what they told me I can say. All right. So 7th grade math scores, you see the state average is 35%, and we were 54%. One of the things that I feel like we've done a good job at the junior high over the last however many years is kind of seeing what may be coming next and putting together a game plan to attack's probably not the right word, but to combat whatever it is that's being thrown our way. Going back to when we left No Child Left Behind, going to Common Core, and then we left Common Core, went to OAS, and now everything looks like Common Core again. It's just trying to figure out what the game is and in order to put a game plan together. One of the things I've told my school leadership team is if you come to Robbie Rainwater and say, I want you to put together a defense that's going to stop that offense. I'm going to do everything I can to stop whatever play that offense is going to run. But if I show up with my 11 players, okay, with shoulder pads and helmet on, and get to the game and find out that they're playing basketball, okay, we're going to look like we're disorganized. We don't know what's going on. What have you been doing? Have you even done your research? And so part of what I've tried to get across to our staff and through the school leadership team is coming up with a game plan to combat the game that's being played, but more importantly, what is the game? And nobody knows, so we're going to try and figure out, what that game looks like. I appreciate the fact that Dr. Simpson and Mr. Ogle and Ms. Walters have, and everybody in the central office has, taken a realistic approach to this and saying, let's compare ourselves to the state average and go from there. One of the concerns that I have in the game that's being played is when you look at the going to 7th grade ELA here, state average 34 and we're 36. When you go to the 8th grade math, okay, which is the most comparable score that we have to the NAEP, because it's hard to compare a 7th grade math test to an NAEP when the NAEP doesn't give them a 7th grade math test. Okay, so 8th grade math is more comparable to us. Our ELA test is not, because their reading test and writing test are two separate tests. Ours is combined. And there's a big portion of that. If you do really poorly on the writing test, you could fail the whole ELA test on the OCCT. So it's hard to compare those two when it comes time for the NAEP. We're proud of the fact, we're happy that we're above the state average in 8th grade math with a 40% compared to the state average of 24%. But the more you dive into this and the more you look at comparing a grade level test like the OCCT to a general assessment like the NAEP that is not a grade level test, the more you dive into what the data actually tells you becomes harder and harder to look at your staff every day. And I'm going to tell you why. Since 1990, since the main NAEP test has been given, the highest the national average has ever been in 8th grade math is 34%. In 27 years of existence, the highest it's ever been is 34%. It's very difficult, even though we're happy we're above state average, it's very difficult to go to those teachers and say, based on how we're comparing ourselves to the NAEP and to a national average and compare apples to oranges here, it's hard to look at that and say, when you got 10 kids sitting over here, the best you're ever going to do is 6 out of 10 is going to fail. That's a very difficult conversation to have. So we're going to work through that. We're going to figure out how to combat that game. One of the things that we did in diving into the research is we went into the NAEP and we said, okay, we want to look at what state has had the highest proficient rate since the inception of the main NAEP test. There's two different ones, but the one that we compared to is the one that was instituted in 1990. Massachusetts, every year since 1990, has had the highest proficient rate of any state in the nation. And the highest they've ever been is 54%. Again, very difficult to go to your staff and say, according to NAEP, the best you're going to ever be is 5 out of your 10 kids are going to fail. That's very hard coming from teachers that have had 85 to 90% pass rates just a year ago. So the next thing we did was we got on Massachusetts. Okay, they're the best. So we're going to see what you go to their website, and they've got a question of the day for math. They got a question of the day for ELA. And then they've got tests that they give periodically that matches the NAEP, supposedly. And we got on there and we got those test questions. They're exactly the same test questions we ask on our benchmarks. They're exactly the same test questions that we've been using in our instruction. So what is the game? We don't know. Neither does anybody else. NAEP, if you don't know, when you take the NAEP test, you never get the results. There's only two results given for the NAEP. That is the national average and the state average. You cannot get how your kids at Guthrie Public Schools did on the NAEP. It doesn't exist. So the less trick, and you guys know this, and I think that's probably one of the things that you guys do a great job of is the less transparency there is in any item, the more speculation there is of mishandling. And this is pretty evident out here. But 8th grade ELA, again, it's hard to compare because our test, the reading and writing is together, their reading and writing is separate. But that being said, we're 1 point above state average. One of the things that we did last year through the budget cuts is we had to combine, ever since I've been in Guthrie, the reading class and the writing classes were always separate. Last year, through the budget cuts we've gone through, we had to combine those. We felt like it just didn't work for us, and so this year we were able to split those back and forth again. And I think that's going to help, and we're going to see some payoff from that. Just simply because if a kid goes into a class and they just can't stand writing, they're going to end, if that's in the same class as they're reading, they're going to end up disliking reading too. And we saw a lot of that. The kid that wouldn't do their writing assignment also wasn't doing their book summaries. So that has drastically reduced this year by having those two classes split. This is probably the most interesting one, is that for how many years now, science has been the scapegoat to all this, and now they're the highest score. You know, again, trying to figure out what that game is that's being played is very difficult, but very proud of our science scores being 10% above state average. So what we're doing at the junior high is, you know, we're going to continue to do what we do well, and the things that we have found that work for our kids and things that help our kids grow. It was good enough under API with No Child Left Behind. It was good enough to get off school improvement with A through F, and surely it'll be good enough through this storm that we're going to weather for a little bit. But that is the thing that we're trying to accomplish right now, is dive in, find the states that have done really well that have compared to NAP over several years, and see what they're doing differently than us. To this point, they're not doing anything differently. They may have different demographics, but as far as their instruction and how they're assessing their kids and how often they're assessing their kids and have the rigor, one of the things I try and talk to my staff about is rigor to me is different than what I think maybe the testing company sees as rigor, and that is giving I have a son in 4th grade, so I'll use 4th grade as an example. Okay? Giving a 4th grade kid 6th grade homework, to me, is not rigor. If I take a 4th grade student and I tell him to go home and do vocab words at a 6th grade level, that is still a very low level assignment. It's just at a different level. It's at a different maturity rate. One of the things that, if you look at how education is condensed, that you'll find is that in 1990, when this NAEP started, the things that 8th grade math kids are taking now is what the average senior in high school knew in 1990. And I think maturity, discipline, all those things aren't factored into some of this that plays into scores. I am proud of the fact that we're above state average in all our subjects, but I do have a huge concern of the game that's being played. And I appreciate you guys' support. We appreciate you guys' comments about the things that are going on in this district and the curriculum from bottom to top. But at some point in time, there's got to be some, sensible approach, and somebody's got to stand up and say this is nonsense. So I just don't. We're going to keep doing what we do, and I'm going to keep encouraging teachers to teach. We're going to keep encouraging students to learn. I'm going to keep trying to do my best to get rid of anything that gets in the way of those two things, and hopefully this game that we're seeing right now isn't a long-term trend in that saying, no matter what we do, the best year we're going to be is 34%, because that's the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
So Anyway, any questions?
Whatever you're suiting up for, it's working, so. And we can see it, so we appreciate it. But I can see your frustration, but
Well, it's
you're still doing it positive, you know.
It's
taking
frustrating
them.
for me because,
I can understand, yeah.
it's hard going to a Kathy Ice or Miss Ludlow or Miss Maltz or Miss Ogle or whoever else, you know, and saying, hey, you're above state average at 40%, and we start diving into that, because I've got a very competitive staff. You know, they don't just compete with each other, but they're competing against, you know, and I've seen up here last year, you know, I'm a very competitive guy, you know, if you don't want me to compete, then turn the stinking scoreboard off. But as long as that scoreboard's on, we're going to compete for a better score. And it's hard going to somebody that's very competitive, and when you're diving into the actual data that is there, and seeing that the highest that any state has ever been, is 54%. It's hard going to a teacher and saying, look at those 10 kids right there, and you tell me which 5 are going to fail. When before, it was look at those 10 kids and tell me which 9 are going to pass. And so it's a little disheartening, but we're going to keep competing, we're going to keep working, and we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to scratch and claw until somebody listens. So anyway.
That's right. And those 9 are going to pass because the scores are showing. So, good job.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else to say.
It's frustrating.
Just kidding. Okay. You know, we were prepared, like I said, for the scores being lower this year, and fortunately, you know, you look at our scores compared to the state average, we actually did pretty well. And I know it's not a lot or, you know, big difference between state average and what we're at, but we are above state average. And when we looked at these scores a year ago and we were below in about everything, to say that we've actually made up some ground makes me feel good about the work that we're doing at Guthrie High School. But you can see here in 10th grade math, state average was 27%. Boy, that's a great state average, isn't it? 27%. Kind of like what he was alluding to earlier. But at the same time, our kids were 28%, so we're actually better than state average. And so real pleased with that and the work of our math department. And we've done a lot of work on trying to get everybody on the same page. Of course, the high school's been quite a difference because we've gone from having EOIs in just about every subject area now to one test that they took as sophomores. So we've really got to coordinate our freshman algebra classes with our geometry classes and then ultimately our Algebra 2 classes, which are going to be taking the ACT this year for our assessment. So we've done a really good job of making sure we're vertically and horizontally aligned, and I think that's made a difference in our scores in math. This one was a little bit surprising because year in and year out, our English scores are the highest out of all the subject areas, and this year we're a little bit lower, but as you can see, just statewide they were lower. And one thing about it, I was talking to several of my English teachers, and they made the comment that the test didn't really measure, or wasn't, the questions on the test weren't really what they said they were going to be, which wasn't a really big surprise, but that we kind of have an understanding or idea of what's going on. One thing we are doing, and it was long before we ever even saw our scores, but we have co-op with Oklahoma State University, and we're taking part in their OSU writing project, and it's on argumentative writing, where kids make a claim and they support that claim, which is very beneficial once they get on to post-secondary education, especially at the collegiate level. And so our kids are doing a tremendous amount of argumentative writing, which will serve them well when they get into college. And so I think that's going to have an effect on our overall scores as well. But in fact, we've got 3 teachers that will be going to the National Writing Convention here at the end of this week. So we're excited about what they're doing, what OSU is bringing to us. It's a grant through them. They came to us, basically solicit our services at Guthrie High School, and so they're providing all the funding for that, and we've been appreciative, and our teachers have gotten some really good ideas out of that. In fact, they've done a really good job of doing the professional development on days that we're actually out of school, we're having professional development within the district. So the teachers only, out of 6 meetings throughout the year, they only have to have substitutes on 2 days, and then the other days are all either during breaks or when we're having PD day within district. So that's been nice as well. We haven't had to pull our teachers out of classes for that professional development. This is interesting too. Last year, you'll recall in biology, the state average was 49 and we're like 32%. Well, this year we're actually above state average on the science test. I mean, it's hard to explain how you go from 13, 14 below to 2 above, but I'll be honest, we were doing the same things that we've always done. I mean, I can't just sit up here and say, oh, we did all these wonderful things and went up 2%, but the teachers were continuing to do the same types of things that they've always done. And I think, too, we can attribute this to the fact that in the past, like last year, we didn't have any of our top freshmen take the biology test, so all of them took it as sophomores, none of them took it as a freshman. So all of our students in the entire sophomore class took that science test, and that, of course, that's going to help your scores when your best kids are taking that test. So pointing out that's probably the biggest difference I can attribute it to, but still not a big difference. But when the state average is only 20% and we're actually above state, there's a lot of bigger schools with clientele that's much more different than ours that didn't score that well. So I'm very pleased with that. Very proud of our staff. And then in history, we're actually several points above. Last year, I think we were 5 or 6 below. And this year, we were 3 percentage points above. And teachers really been working hard on giving kids a lot of level 3 and 4 questions on their tests and their interim assessments. They look at political cartoons, a lot of documents where they have to analyze the document and answer questions, and I think that's paying off because their scores have been higher too. And that's actually, I should say, I don't know why they say 10th grade, because no 10th graders took a U.S. history test. It was juniors. And that state actually labeled it 10th grade, and I don't understand that either. So they're actually 11th graders that took the U.S. history test. But no kidding, if you look, it says 10th grade, and it's not 10th grade, it's 11th grade. So anyway, I guess we all make mistakes. But anyway, the kids did a good job, the teachers have done a good job, and we're really proud of their efforts and what we're doing. And again, this year we've gone to the hour-long, it's actually 55-minute lunch period with built-in remediation time. The kids are taking advantage of that. Our tardies are way down than they were a year ago. Our eligibility list has gone down considerably, and that's just extra time the kids are being afforded to either get enrichment in some of those AP classes or get remediation in some of the classes that they're not doing well in. And after the first round of interim assessments, we've got teachers bringing those kids in and reteaching those concepts that they missed. So that's been beneficial as well. And then we've got all of our juniors on the ACT prep through Study Island. We purchased that as a district, and we've got students working on that. And it's a really good program. In fact, our ACT prep class, our instructor is using it in there, and he told me he's very pleased. It's money well spent, and that that's a really good program to increase ACT scores. So that's really the push we're making this year, is to improve our ACT scores, because that's going to ultimately be our assessment, which I like. It's just one assessment, and it's not a 6, 7 EOIs like we've done in the past. They've really done a good job of streamlining that down with a history test, so and an additional science test. So to go from 7 to 3 is something that we're real pleased about. But anyway, happy with what's going on at GHS and our marked improvement from last year to this year. Any questions?
Good job. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment to the principals, the administration. As a board member, seeing this presentation, I can't even begin to tell you how proud I am of you guys. You have a moving target that is so hard to hit, and to see the collaborative effort that you've made at every level, teachers, parents, administration, it makes me very proud as a board member and a parent.
Amen. Thank you.
Agenda item 11, the consent agenda. All the following items are routine in nature. Normally approved at board meetings will be approved by one vote unless any board member desires to separate a vote on any of or all of the items. Consent agenda consists in discussion, consideration, and action on the items listed in the agenda. So we need to make any changes.
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley. Yes. Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12A, recommendation, consideration, action to adopt a calendar of regularly scheduled school board meetings for 2018.
That is on page 45 of your packet, and got to get there first. We have, we're staying with the second Monday of the month, with one exception, and that is
January.
And I think I spoke maybe a month ago about this. The second Monday of the month is Martin Luther King Day. And so we're going to do that on a Thursday. And we have done that before. So it will be a little bit different on that January board meeting coming right back from Christmas break. But we'll make that work, and then the rest of them will stay with the second Monday.
I make a motion that we approve the calendar of regularly scheduled school board meetings for 2018.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12B, recommendation, consideration, action for all board member election to be held on February 13th, 2018, and runoff election if needed on April 3rd, 2018 for board positions 3 and 4, which have 4-year terms of office.
This will be the seats held currently by Ms. Bennett Johnson and Ms. Pearson, and this is the board is required to call for this election through resolution. Page 46 of your packet contains the resolution.
I make a motion, we call for the board member election to be held on February 13, 2018, and a runoff election, if needed, on April 3rd, 2018, for board positions number 3 and 4, which have 4-year terms of office.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12C, recommendation, consideration, action upon renewal agreement with Northwest Evaluation Association.
This is our map testing that you heard a little bit about earlier. We have consistently reduced the cost of that through the years, and we are testing fewer children, but this is still a requirement that we have a testing module for compliance, and Ms. Walters has trimmed a little bit off of the cost. It's $18,985. Ms. Walters can answer any questions you have. Recommend approval.
I thank you for squeezing that cost down. We appreciate it. And I make a motion, we approve the renewal agreement with Northwest Evaluation Association.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12D, recommendation, consideration, and action upon infant and early childhood services awareness survey for parents in early care and education providers for pre-K through 3rd.
This is a survey that the health department is wanting to approve, and the reason for board approval is it will be surveying our staff at the pre-K through 3rd grade level. Ms. Walters can answer any questions, but we also have Justin Fortney from the health department if you have questions for him regarding the survey.
Is this the first year they're surveying the staff, or I can't remember?
This is actually a survey. Some coworkers of mine in Rogers County have had a grant for the last 5 years.
Okay. Okay.
And so they're trying to compare that to a county where the grant has existed to this point to see if they've done a good job or not.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Are you just assessing the awareness of the programs that are available?
Yes, that's one part of their program. They're trying to measure that particular part of their grant they had for. It's a partnership between the health department and the Department of Mental Health, a federal grant. And so one of the components is measuring how aware people are of services that are in that particular county, in counties in general. Oklahoma.
I make a motion we approve the Infant and Early Childhood Services Awareness Survey for parents and early care and education providers for pre-K through third grade parents and educators, sponsored by the Child Guidance Service of the Oklahoma State Department of Health.
Second.
She seconded it? Okay. We get to discuss this, right? Now that it's been seconded. I think the board members know, they're probably rolling their eyes at this point. I am not a big fan or a proponent of surveys, especially of our students and teachers. I'm glad to see that this is voluntary. I just wanted to make that known. I think that, I know that a lot of benefits come from those that participate. And so the teachers, if you feel compelled, I encourage you to do so. But I don't want to represent I don't want the parents or teachers to think that we're approving this and recommending it merely because we have to. That's all I have to say. Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes?
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12E, recommendation, consideration, action on memorandum of understanding between Rose State College and Guthrie High School for a dual concurrent program for 2017 through 2019.
We've had a fairly long-standing relationship with Rose State, offering concurrent enrollment either online or through ITV. But there was a change that was made this year where the regents of both A&M colleges and the University of Oklahoma began requiring a memorandum of understanding, and between the school that is hosting it and the university that is providing, or college that's providing the services. So that is why this is the first time you've seen this, and actually the first version of the memorandum of understanding that Rose State forwarded to us, I rejected because I did not feel like it was it had enough information in it, and it was very vague, and it looked like it had been hatched very quickly. And so they went back and retooled it, and we present that to you. And I mean, the next, both of these are related, item E and item F. Our longstanding relationship with Rose State has been very successful for our students, but we were also presented with an opportunity to potentially enhance our offerings with relationship with Northwestern Oklahoma State. We're not duplicating services. We are offering additional options for our students for concurrent enrollment. And a reminder to the board members that for seniors, these courses are tuition free. They still have to pay for books and fees, but the tuition is paid for. So, if you've got any questions about about item E, I'd be glad to entertain them. Recommend approval.
And the credits transfer,
Yes, we verified all the credits transferred to state schools.
I make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding between Rose State College and Guthrie High School for the dual concurrent program for 2017 through 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley. Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12F, recommendation, consideration, action upon memorandum of understanding between Northwest Oklahoma State University and Guthrie High School for the dual concurrent program for 2017 through 2020.
And again, as I mentioned earlier, this program, we explored this with Northwestern. We've had an existing relationship with them for graduate studies for our staff members that's been conducted on our campus at the high school, and wanted to enhance that and see if we had some additional offerings that we could provide our students. And so we explored that and worked out some really good options that I think our students can enjoy some additional class offerings. Answer any questions, recommend approval.
I make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding between Northwestern Oklahoma State University and Guthrie High School for the dual concurrent program for 2017 through 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12G, recommendation, consideration, action upon the approval agreement for 3D Consulting Group LLC for 2017-2018.
In our September board meeting, we had a presentation from a demographic firm, and we tabled that item, and that was an action that the board took. Since that time, we have reached out to our software provider for our transportation routing system, and that firm has some options that they had in early stages of development for software to draw district boundary lines for attendance zones for elementary schools. Our staff, myself, Mr. Benson, Mr. Thompson, we all participated in research. Mr. Benson, Mr. Thompson, extensive research into this, and this is a much more economical option for us. That it doesn't come without some concern, but as I shared at the committee meeting, regardless of what we do with the actions that we're getting ready to take and the things that we're getting ready to do, we're going to have some concern. And there's no way to alleviate all of that. I am confident that this software and the expertise that's provided by this company will allow us to draw our district boundary lines. And so I recommend approval, and Mr. Benson and I, or Mr. Thompson, can answer any questions you might have.
Make a motion, we approve the agreement with 3DE Consulting Group LLC for 2017-2018.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I want to
$10,000 cheaper.
I want to thank you and Cody and Dee for going out and looking elsewhere and taking into consideration the board had concerns about the funding. We appreciate it very much.
We do. Thank you very much.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Ready to go off the rails?
Yeah, this is
Agenda item
exactly.
12H.
Go for this one.
Go off the rail.
Go ahead and read it.
Discussion, consideration, and possible action toward a contract for Guthrie High School chiller replacement.
Before item 12H is considered, the board will need to address a matter under new business because we did not know about, nor could we have reasonably foreseen the need for such an agenda item at the time of posting the agenda. Specifically, on Friday, November 10th, 2017, after the agenda was posted, we opened the bids and subsequently received a written request from Hardesty Team Company to withdraw their bid on the high school chiller project. Here is a copy of the letter. Based on advice of our attorney and our architect and their recommendations, I would recommend that the board accept consider under new business accepting this letter. And then we would take up consideration of item 12H.
I make a motion that the board grant the request of Hardesty Team Company to withdraw its bid on project number 1732, the Guthrie High School chiller replacement, and to exonerate the bidder and its surety from liability under the bid bond for the reasons set out in their letter requesting such action.
And with your motion, can you read that first paragraph, please?
Oh, yes, sir, I'm sorry. The board finds that the district did not know about and could not have reasonably foreseen at the time of posting the agenda that Hardesty would request to withdraw their bid on the high school chiller, and therefore this is a matter which should be handled pursuant to Oklahoma law under new business. Hardesty Team Company has requested in writing to withdraw its bid on project number 1732, the Guthrie High School chiller replacement, and to exonerate the bidder and its surety from liability under the bid bond. And now, again, so it'll be in order here. Therefore, I make a motion that the board grant the request of Hardesty Team Company to withdraw its bid on project number 1732, the Guthrie High School chiller replacement, and to exonerate the bidder and its surety from liability under the bid bond for the reasons set out in their letter requesting such action.
Have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 12H.
Based on the previous action under new business by the Board of Education, I recommend that the board accept on the high school chiller replacement Innovative Mechanical from Oklahoma City with a base bid of $186,500.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 13, proposed executive session for the purpose of discussing employment of personnel, FMLA request, resignation or separation from employment, and transfer of position request is all set out in the personnel reports. Discussion of extra duty assignments as listed for 2017-2018, and periodic annual evaluation in terms of employment for Dr. Michael Simpson. Superintendent of Schools, disclosure of which information would violate confidentiality requirements of state and/or federal law, all pursuant to 25 Oklahoma Statute, Section 307B, 1 and 7.
I move we go into executive session.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Board is back in session. All of the items in agenda item number 13 were discussed in the executive session and no votes were taken. This shall constitute the executive session minutes. Agenda item 14, vote on action is set out in personnel reports.
I make a motion that we approve the personnel reports.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 15, action upon recommendation of extra duty assignments for 2017-2018.
I make a motion we approve the recommendation of extra duty assignments for 2017-2018.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington.
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Agenda item 16, recommendation, consideration, and action to accept any resignations offered since the posting of the agenda.
We have none.
Agenda item 17, discussion and possible action on new business not known about or could not have been reasonably foreseen at the time of the agenda posting.
We have no additional new business tonight.
Okay. Agenda item 18.
Madam President, I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Pearson.
Yes.
Pennington. Watts.
Yes.
Smedley.
Yes.
Bennett Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
5 ayes, 0 nays.